capitalism. All of the gains in automation, it goes to the owner class. All you have to do is have everyone be an owner, and now suddenly any gain in automation is a gain for everybody. If you grow just one thing, it may not grow as well as if it grows with another thing. A good example of that is called the Three Sisters method of farming.
There is definitely multi-apartment buildings or multi-families that do passive design.
$100 million that they gave to Joe Rogan that they would kind of be out if they breach contract. Is that a bigger number? Or is 2 billion a bigger number?
I don't know, Zach.
It's a tough one. I
It's
know.
really hard.
And maybe comparing numbers is not Jeremy's strong suit. Gotta go kill a Jenny.
I still don't think you should kill her. I don't think it's a good idea.
It's a ghost, dude. Welcome back, everybody, to Bread Theory. Tonight we're going to be continuing on with Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. We're on to Chapter 3, and this one covers kind of the early American colonies before they were formally, before they rebelled, really, before the American Revolution. And we're going to see how life was like for people that were, I think this mostly focuses on just regular working people. I don't know if there's too much talk of slavery in this particular chapter, but always, content warning, this book is quite heavy and does not pull punches. So you may hear some stuff about human cruelty that you'd rather not hear. So just if that's something that you don't think you can deal with, then maybe skip this stream or this episode, however it is that you're finding it. Gonna have Trisha on, as well as perhaps other people. I sent out an invite to a bunch of people this time, see who shows up. But for now, just kind of setting things up. Just a reminder, Bread Theory is a proud member of loves's TV. We believe very strongly in helping out one another as leftist creators. We have all sorts of leftist creators that have joined. Let's see, let me pull up the link to that right now for you, so that you too can get informed every time this show goes live, as well as a bunch of other great shows that also stream, and as well as the stuff that other creators put out. So we have authors, we have artists, we have podcasters, YouTube creators, live streamers, all sorts of guys and gals and NB pals. All trying to help out each other by putting our stuff out to the same page. And so far it's worked pretty well. It's gotten me a lot of good contacts. It's gotten me some dedicated and loyal audience members. So yeah, it's been good cross-pollination and us just helping push back against the algorithm collectively that Facebook tends to favor right-wing content over anything the least bit leftist. So there's the link for that. Encourage you all to go like that. Even if you don't think Facebook is all that great of a place, which in many respects it is not, we are at least trying to carve out one bright spot where you can come and learn stuff and be among fellow travelers and not have to worry constantly about being misunderstood or being slammed for your opinions because they happen to be to the left of, hunting the poor for sport. Alright, I think that's just about all I'm going to share it to. Maybe one more place. And then I'll share it there too. I think we'll get into it, and other guests will just have to catch up. Because I'm already half an hour past when I wanted to start. Life happens. It's not a big deal. We'll get through it all eventually. Excuse me. So I've been very busy. This is the busy season for landscaping. I'm doing tons of design work, which I like a lot, and I'm doing these potting events where I go to I go to apartment complexes and condo complexes and, do a little demonstration. I teach people how to arrange flowers, living flowers, in a pot in a way that looks pleasing, give them a little bit of the theory behind the design. And then I get to take something home, and oftentimes there's snacks. One time there was a bar. That was a big draw as well. And it's just been a lot of fun, but stressful and busy at the same time. Always trying to manage that balance. All right, I think that's all the time I'm going to wait before we start into it. As usual, we are using Audible Anarchy, really great channel. I will share the link for this particular video in case you want to go back and listen in on your own time. So, there you have it. And as always, this is an educational space. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Only bad questions are ones asked in bad faith. Other than that, anything at all is fair game. I always enjoy helping people learn and come to new realizations. That's the main reason I do what I do here. Here we go with Chapter 3 of Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States.
This recording is a product of Audio Anarchy. A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. Chapter 3. Persons of Mean and Vile Condition. Before I begin, it's time to issue a brief content warning. The chapter contains sexual violence, rape, and abuse, as well as racism. If you wish to continue listening, here we go. In 1676, 70 years after Virginia was founded, 100 years before it supplied leadership for the American Revolution, that colony faced a rebellion of white frontiersmen joined by slaves and servants. A rebellion so threatening that the governor had to flee the burning capital of Jamestown, and England decided to send 1,000 soldiers across the Atlantic, hoping to maintain order among 40,000 colonists. This was Bacon's Rebellion. After the uprising was suppressed, its leader, Nathaniel Bacon, dead, and his associates hanged, Bacon was described in a Royal Commission report. Quote, "He was said to be about 34 years of age, indifferent, tall, but slender, black-haired, and of an ominous, pensive, melancholy aspect, of a pestilent and prevalent logical discourse tending to atheism. He seduced the vulgar and most ignorant people to believe, 2/3 of each county being of that sort, so that their whole hearts and hopes were set now upon Bacon. Next, he charges the governor as negligent and wicked, treacherous and incapable, the laws and taxes as unjust and oppressive, and cries up absolute necessity of redress. Thus, Bacon encouraged the tumult, and as the unquiet crowd follow and adhere to him, he listeth them as they come in upon a large paper, writing their names circular-wise, that their ringleaders might not be found out. Having conjured them into this circle, given them brandy to wind up the charm, and enjoined them by an oath to stick fast together, and to him, and the oath being administered, he went and infected New Kent County, ripe for rebellion." Unquote. Bacon's rebellion began with conflict over how to deal with the Indians who were close by on the western frontier, constantly threatening. Whites, who had been ignored when huge land grants around Jamestown were given away, had gone west to find land, and there they encountered Indians. Were those frontier Virginians resentful that the politicos and landed aristocrats who controlled the colony's government in Jamestown first pushed them westward into Indian territory, and then seemed indecisive in fighting the Indians? That might explain the character of their rebellion, not easily classifiable as either anti-aristocrat or anti-Indian, because it was both. And the governor, William Berkeley, and his Jamestown crowd, were they more conciliatory to the Indians? They viewed certain of them as spies and allies, now that they had monopolized the land in the East, could use frontier whites as a buffer, and needed peace. The desperation of the government in suppressing the rebellion seemed to have a double motive. Developing an Indian policy.
Looks like Trisha is here. Hello.
Hi. Sorry
How's it
I'm
going?
late. I didn't see it in the group chat. I just now saw it in the private message.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
It's all good. Thank you for sending it over to the other message too, just in case.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case.
Yeah.
How are you doing tonight?
All right. Other than having to juggle with the air conditioning. My apologies if I have to randomly hop up and run over there, but
That's okay.
it's been flipping my power off.
Wow.
Yeah. It's kind of fucking hot today, although
So-
I don't get it. It's handled it better on hotter days than it is today, but for the past couple hours, it's been popping off roughly every 10 to 15 minutes, and I'm like,
What a crazy spring.
yeah,
There's been craziness everywhere.
and ain't that for damn sure.
Like we had a night recently that it almost froze, and we're supposed to be about a week past the very last possible frost date in Minnesota, and yet it almost happened again. It's,
Damn.
Yeah, right? Just global weirdness everywhere.
Right, like, can you get somewhere in between, not bouncing between frost and roasting your ass
No.
off?
No, but that's what global warming likes, is those extremes, you know. Flood next to drought, heat wave next to cold front, you know.
Yep. Fucking
Yep.
weird shit. Mother Nature's pissed at us.
That's right. Yeah. Well, pissed mostly at like 10 or 12 billionaires, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That. And, you know, the militaries.
And the military. Yeah.
Yep.
We're mostly fighting on behalf of those billionaires, but yeah.
Right. They're the puppets pulling the strings, but between their companies and
That's right.
the military, they're producing the majority of the pollution. And there went my fucking air again. Excuse
All right.
me,
Sure, no problem.
Scooch doggo. Oh, good here.
All right, so what we've been talking about, or what Zin has been talking about in the chapter so far, has been that as poor Virginians are not finding much in the way of opportunity in the Virginia colonies, they're being pushed out westward, and they're encountering the natives, who they also don't like. So it's an anti-bourgeois but also anti-native policy that they seem to subscribe to. Sounds kind of familiar. I'm sure Tucker Carlson would have done just fine in that era, railing against the big corporations while at the same time preaching all sorts of xenophobia and racism. So
Right. Fucking asshole. I can't stand him.
no, he's probably the worst on TV right now.
Oh, it's really scary that in the last few months there has been one or two times that he went on rants that were so close to getting the point it was fucking painful. And I was
Right.
like, am I agreeing with Tucker fucking Carlson on any goddamn thing? But then he went and
Right.
fucked it up, and I was like, that's how.
Yep.
Like,
It's always that racist, right-hand turn that he always pulls at the very last second there. He'll start
Right.
with a good analysis and then just pile some
Fuck it all up.
racism and xenophobia on top, and yeah.
Yep.
It's like
And-
like squeezing out a dog turd on top of your plate of spaghetti.
Pretty much, yeah. He'll bust out just enough accurate political analysis on something that is like, what did I just fucking hear Tucker Carlson say?
Right.
But then he goes and takes the dump on it again.
Yep. Every time.
Every time. Yep.
Oh,
Oh, it's so befuddling, and what the fuck?
right.
He would have fit in beautifully in their day.
Yeah, oh yeah. He would have been like leading the charge. Welcome, James. Good to see you. Yeah,
Hi, James.
we started pretty late too. I've only been going like less than 10 minutes even. So you
And I
haven't
just
missed
ended.
much yet. Yeah, and then Trisha just got here. So let's continue on.
which would divide Indians in order to control them. In New England at this very time, Massasoit's son Metacom was threatening to unite Indian tribes and had done frightening damage to Puritan settlements in King Philip's War. And teaching the poor whites of Virginia that rebellion did not pay, by a show of superior force, by calling for troops from England itself, by mass hanging.
So we're talking about Bacon's Rebellion. Something that I feel probably had a paragraph devoted to in my history book way back when I was in elementary school, but yeah, I retain none of that knowledge. So
Maybe 2 paragraphs.
yeah, right. So
Like, they didn't really like covering stuff that gets sticky.
right. Especially when the civilized people are killing one another. Gotta gloss that right over.
Civilized.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
In
Oh, you
huge
just gotta throw
huge air
quotations
quotes,
around.
yes.
Yeah. They thought that covering themselves from chin to toes made them civilized,
That's
and
right, yeah.
exploiting labor made them civilized. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, here you are dressed for the hotter weather, you savages.
That's right.
God, and everyone can see your skin. Ah!
Oh.
Ah!
Yup.
Fuck was wrong with them. So many things.
So many things.
Too many things to really list at once.
So yeah, and as usual, the colonists themselves, the ones in control, are way overreacting with a way over show of force by mass hangings to put down this rebellion. So there's that too.
Literal overkill.
Oh yeah. Most literal sense of the word. Yup.
It seems like the title of this book could use a subtitle of "What the fuck is wrong with you people?" and it would literally be applicable because this book is one big long list of what the fuck was wrong with people at that
Right.
point in time.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. People such as the United States, aka, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Violence had escalated on the frontier before the rebellion. Some Doeg Indians took a few hogs to redress a debt, and whites, retrieving the hogs, murdered 2 Indians. The Doegs then sent out a war party to kill a white herdsman, after which a white militia company killed 24 Indians. This led to a series of Indian raids, with the Indians, outnumbered, turning to guerrilla warfare. The House of Burgesses in Jamestown declared war on the Indians, but proposed to exempt those Indians who cooperated. This seemed to anger the frontierspeople who wanted total war, but also resented the high taxes assessed to pay for the war.
So we have some frontier right libertarians on our hands here. I
Yeah,
want to
we
be the
want
king
war,
of... That's right.
but-
War's great as long as it profits me and I can still be a king of my little fiefdom.
Right. Like, fuck. Don't ask me to pay for it, but I'm gonna insist it happens.
Right. Yes. Right. I want all the services but none of the taxes, thank you.
Right. And it's like, wait, how, what? Well, the fuck do you think that's gonna happen? Oh, fuck. Although we'd all be a lot richer if we didn't have to keep fucking still paying for wars. And
Oh yeah. Those, I mean, almost $1 trillion a year now. That could fund so many social programs, which would then pay for themselves.
we could literally end poverty
Right.
in every way, shape, and form. Have
Right.
housing, education, health care, food on the table, all covered, and instead we're investing in making more warfare.
Yeah. And all of those things would produce returns because people wouldn't be paying all of their money to debt, which it's not really productive to have such a big suck of funding going to just debt. It helps a few people, those debt
Right.
collectors, but that's it, really it.
It's making a handful of fucking corporate warmongers really
Mhm.
wealthy, Zach.
Yeah.
Doesn't that justify it?
Supposedly it does.
Them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they've convinced a significant number of people to go along with it. Because that's in their best interest.
Sadly. Fucking idiots waving their flags like, go America! It's like,
Yeah.
do you even know what the fuck is going on?
Oh, no. No. Never.
Times were hard in 1676. Quote, "There was genuine distress, genuine poverty. All contemporary sources speak of the great mass of people as living in severe economic straits," writes Wilcombe Washburn, who, using British colonial records, has done an exhaustive study of Bacon's rebellion. It was a dry summer, ruining the corn crop which was needed for food and the tobacco crop needed for export. Governor Berkeley, in his 70s, tired of holding office, wrote wearily about his situation. Quote, "How miserable that man is that governs a people where 6 parts of 7, at least, are poor, indebted, discontented, and armed."
So James says it looks like Biden was on the news saying if China invaded Taiwan, he would use military action. I mean, that sounds like a bunch of bluster that he's going to have to walk back, because that's just as irresponsible as threatening to use direct military force or a no-fly zone over Ukraine. You don't get directly involved with nuclear powers, or powers, for that matter, as large and economically powerful, and as much as we are dependent on as China. That's stupid. At best, it's a boast, it's a bluff, and at worst, it could lead to economic catastrophe. But that's stupid. We have no interest in preserving Taiwan other than it is a capitalist region of an otherwise more or less socialist state. I'm a bit skeptical of how socialist China is versus what they proclaim, but still, it's pretty clear they're far beyond what we are in the U.S. Much further down that road. We have to use military action in order to ask for money for more military action. Yeah, military action is virtually always about economics. It's about controlling resources and the flow of resources, and that's usually the long and short of it. Sometimes it's to conquer territory. The U.S. hasn't done that in a while, and probably doesn't have a real big interest in doing that yet, since we still have so much land that is developable within the United States borders. But yeah, quite the situation. So I'll have to see where that goes. We were just talking about, James said that Biden is threatening that if China invades Taiwan, he would use military action. And I'm calling BS on that. I don't think that is something that he would ever do. That would risk way too much. So
I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence about that one, because he's already been, putting a bunch of aircraft carriers and shit off the coast of Australia
oh
to
yeah,
go right into Chinese waters at any point in time, and trying to
Sure.
threaten them about that. But I don't know if that's just posturing, or if he actually is
Yeah.
fucking dumb enough to go to war with China.
and
I
that
don't
would be, I mean, just the economics alone of it would be a complete disaster for the U.S. We depend so much on their products
Right.
and on their rare earth minerals that we can't just get other places to run our microchips, all our smart houses, all the next generation of technology is all dependent on Chinese minerals and production. So that alone would completely bankrupt the U.S., and that would be it, really. We would
Leave
no
us
longer...
with no production, because
Right.
most of the corporations that are based here have moved all of their fucking production lines over there.
Yeah. But if we're in open war with them, guess what they're gonna seize first is those facilities. So yeah, I don't buy it. That would be the end of America. It just would. There'd be no winning. I mean, China's army alone is so much larger than the U.S.'s, even though they don't spend as much on the military. And I'm pretty sure China's also nuclear power, so there's that too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as we're seeing, I mean, if someone is as relatively weak as Putin's Russia cannot be directly threatened because they have nuclear warheads, I don't see how you would ever go about threatening China, who's much more strong in every sense of the word.
Right. They outnumber us so greatly. Their military is huge.
It's huge.
I mean, think about it. We've only got about, I think it's 350 million people here, total population. They have billions.
Yeah, they have over 1 billion now. So, yeah, there's no way. I could not see that.
That would be really dumb of our government to go to war against them. And James, as far as Taiwan goes, that's just where all the capitalists ran to when Mao Zedong fucking overthrew all of their exploitative asses. So, I mean,
there's
free,
that.
not free Taiwan.
And, right. It's not as though Taiwan could put up much of a fight either. So, I doubt it would be a very bloody takeover. If it did come to that. So,
and to be clear, honestly, I find it hard to have empathy for people who are crying in their milk about not being able to exploit slave labor anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, the working class people would likely be better off under China anyway.
Right.
Even if it meant a little bit less options for free speech, you would still have a lot more material security. So.
Which, I mean, I do think they need to improve the way that they handle things surrounding free speech.
For sure.
But I can't deny that they've at least made sure that everybody's got fucking housing and health care.
Kind of more critical, like big killer of free speech is just dying because you don't have health care.
Right.
So.
I mean, I think you should always have the liberty to call out your government.
Oh, yeah.
And be like, look, here's where we
too.
need to improve things.
Right.
But, you know, people talk shit here about, oh, you wouldn't last a fucking week in China. It's like, really? Because I'd have housing, I'd have food, I'd have health care, and it wouldn't matter where in the massive amount of land that consists of China I would go, I would still be covered, unlike here where, like, I'm only covered in Michigan.
Right. Yeah. And you know, only covered while you can still afford it.
Right.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, you know, Amanda and I struggle with that every year because she tends to have to switch jobs between the summer and the school season. So that oftentimes is a lapse in her coverage for time. You know, and any time that she's not covered is pretty scary.
Right.
So.
That's one of those things why we need to actually have universal health care so it's no longer tied to our employer.
Oh, that would be so great.
Right.
That would be just amazing.
It hinders people's mobility when it comes to the workplace so fucking much. People stay in miserable ass jobs just because they're like, fuck, I can't handle there being a lapse in my coverage because I have these health issues going on. You know?
And that works in the capitalist favor. So that's why it has not ever changed, is because it's such a big weapon that they can, you know, cudgel us with. Say like, you know, you better not leave or else you're not going to have health care. So accept these terrible hours or working conditions or low pay or whatever it is, or else, you know?
Right. It's not okay. It's manipulation.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely. Yeah, and they got pretty open about being manipulative of the working class during COVID. saying that people need to be kicked off of unemployment, otherwise, why would they ever work for us? Like, it's a pretty big self-report there. That
They were bitching about, like, oh, people are getting more from unemployment than from working, and it's like, and you don't see that the real problem is that you're not fucking paying enough.
yeah, that should kind of be a red flag.
Yeah, big one.
Time for some self-examination of why it is they don't want to work, not just they don't want to.
Right. It's like, maybe people are tired of being fucking exploited so goddamn hard. Okay, right now, the average rent right now is over $1,800 a month. And if you're working on minimum wage, I mean, especially in the States where they still go by the federal minimum, which is only a little over $7 an hour, you literally can't possibly fucking make enough to even pay the rent, let alone anything else.
Yeah, and if you're on minimum wage, like, it's not even enough to have a roommate who's also making minimum wage. You'd have to have, I think, a minimum of 3 people working together and living in the same house in order to all live on full-time minimum wage jobs and make it. So either some of you are getting multiple jobs and working, double time, or you gotta live with a lot of other people just to survive.
I know a lot of people who have no other choice. They are living in big households of a lot of people just for everybody to be able to afford to survive.
Yeah. And I mean, the way this housing market has been going, overheating so much, it's virtually impossible for people to get, buy a house of their own, because by the time they've saved up the down payment, the price of housing has gone up so much, they got to save even more.
Yep.
So it's just a never-ending treadmill. My big hope is that the housing market will crash sometime soon, and finally prices will go back to a reasonable level.
It's a boom and bust thing, and the way that
that's the way it's set up. Yeah.
Real estate market is right now artificially inflating the cost of housing, it's gonna bust again soon.
You'd think it's gotta.
So,
We'll just see.
It's fucked though, because every time that happens, it leaves a bunch more people homeless.
Right. Absolutely true. And then also, if it happened on Biden's watch, that would kind of be the end of his presidency, and whatever ghoul they throw up as his Republican rival would just kind of cakewalk in. So there's that too. It's like, you're screwed either way. Either you don't get housing, or you get another fascist in the White House, and maybe this time they're a competent one who can organize a coup in a halfway efficient manner.
Right, and that's the thing. Like, I won't be surprised if Trump runs again, but I also won't be surprised if his own former VP runs against him, Mike Pence, and he actually takes the Republican support for that. And that guy is fucking scary.
Oh yeah. He's one of those paleo conservatives they like to call themselves. He just wants to go all the way back. It's like founding fathers' time. It's white land-owning men get everything, and everyone else, I don't really care about, so they can struggle amongst themselves. That's his mentality.
That motherfucker pushes for electrocuting the gay out of people.
Yeah.
Disturbed and disturbing.
He has got some really screwed up ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the guy who, he's not allowed to be alone with another woman unless his wife says it's okay. Otherwise it'd be improper. It's like, what are you afraid of doing when you're alone with women?
Right.
What a creep.
You don't trust yourself, and your wife doesn't trust you either.
Kind of sounds that way.
Says a lot. Wow. But then again, we've got Biden getting his leg hair played with by children and sniffing children's hair, and we've got Trump with the whole fucking lineup of underage girls who have come forward like, yeah, this son of a bitch raped me. So
yeah, they're all creeps.
They like to pretend like we have a choice, and they're like, which pile of shit would you like?
Mm-hmm.
Neither. None of them. Fucking none of them. Anyway,
Yeah,
I digress.
I agree. If only we weren't systemically blocked from having any other viable choices. But we are
Sad.
at this point. All right, continuing on.
His phrase, 6 parts of 7, suggests the existence of an upper class not so impoverished. In fact, there was such a class already developed in Virginia. Bacon himself came from this class, had a good bit of land, and was probably more enthusiastic about killing Indians than about redressing the grievances of the poor. But he became a symbol of mass resentment against the Virginia establishment, and was elected in the spring of 1676 to the House of Burgesses. When he insisted on organizing armed detachments to fight the Indians outside official control, Berkeley proclaimed him a rebel and had him captured, whereupon 2,000 Virginians marched into Jamestown to support him. Berkeley let Bacon go in return for an apology, but Bacon went off, gathered his militia, and began raiding the Indians. Bacon's Declaration of the People of July 1676 shows a mixture of populist resentment against the rich and frontier hatred of the Indians. It indicted the Berkeley administration for unjust taxes, for putting favorites in high positions, for monopolizing the beaver trade, and for not protecting the Western farmers from the Indians. Then, Bacon went out to attack the friendly Pamunkey Indians, killing 8, taking others prisoner, plundering their possessions. There is evidence that the rank and file of both Bacon's rebel army and Berkeley's official army were not as enthusiastic as their leaders. There were mass desertions on both sides, according to Washburn. In the fall, Bacon, aged 29, fell sick and died because of, as a contemporary put it, swarms of vermin that bred in his body. A minister, apparently not a sympathizer, wrote this epitaph: Bacon is dead, I am sorry at my heart, that lice and flux should take the hangman's part.
I mean, that's funny. Yeah, I can't say I'm sad to hear of his demise.
Me
Sound
neither.
Like a real piece of shit too.
Right. And just the description there. I can't.
Yeah, right.
You went out in a really fucking nasty way, dude. Shit. Damn.
Yeah.
Kind of had it coming. More than kind of. Really had it coming.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like just a wonderful world to live in where, disease and parasites can claim you at any time, like when you're the prime of your life and you're 29 years old. Let's go back to that. Let's just, ditch all medicine, ditch all modern conveniences. Let's just push the clock back.
Right.
You have to wonder if these conservatives actually know what they're asking for when they want to do away with science and medicine and every modern technology.
Let a few of them die from diarrhea, and let's see how they feel about it then.
Yeah, exactly. Like I bet most of them couldn't spend a weekend alone in the woods without going stir crazy and breaking bones,
Right.
contracting something. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, continuing on.
The rebellion didn't last long after that. A ship armed with 30 guns cruising the York River became the base for securing order, and its captain, Thomas Grantham, used force and deception to disarm the last rebel forces. Coming upon the chief garrison of the rebellion, he found 400 armed Englishmen and Negroes, a mixture of free men, servants, and slaves. He promised to pardon everyone, to give freedom to slaves and servants, whereupon they surrendered their arms and dispersed, except for 80 Negroes and 20 English, who insisted on keeping their arms. Grantham promised to take them to a garrison down the river, but when they got into the boat, he trained his big guns on them, disarmed them, and eventually delivered the slaves and servants to their masters. The remaining garrisons were overcome one by one.
Wow. Yeah, just complete lies and and brute force. That's the way civilization operates.
So basically, on both sides of this fight,
Mhm.
there's a scum fuck leading you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, completely no scruples. I'm sure justifying everything to themselves because they were fighting subhumans in their minds. Um, yep.
racism in a nutshell for you.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. But, I mean, that's pretty telling that the people that held out the longest and didn't want to give up their arms were the ones that had the most to lose because they were going back to slavery and indentured servitude. That right there shows just how horrifically cruel those systems, both of them were. Not to the same degree, but still completely inhumane, both of them.
Right.
23 rebel leaders were hanged. It was a complex chain of oppression in Virginia. The Indians were plundered by white frontiersmen who were taxed and controlled by the Jamestown elite. And the whole colony was being exploited by England, which bought the colonists tobacco at prices it dictated and made 100,000 pounds a year for the king. Berkeley himself, returning to England years earlier to protest the English Navigation Acts, which gave English merchants a monopoly on the colonial trade, had said, quote, "We cannot but resent that 40,000 people should be impoverished to enrich little more than 40 merchants, who, being the only buyers of our tobacco, give us what they please for it. And, after it is here, sell it how they please. And indeed, have 40,000 servants in us at cheaper rates than any other men have slaves." From the testimony of the governor himself, the rebellion against him had the overwhelming support of the Virginia population. A member of his council reported that the defection was, quote, "almost general," unquote, and laid it to, quote, "the lewd dispositions of some persons of desperate fortunes," unquote, who had, quote, "the vain hopes of taking the country wholly out of his majesty's hands into their own," unquote. Another member of the governor's council, Richard Lee, noted that Bacon's rebellion had started over Indian policy, but the, quote, "zealous inclination of the multitude," unquote, to support Bacon was due, he said, to, quote, "hopes of leveling," unquote.
So this is a pretty good precursor to what eventually was the American Civil War, or not Civil War, the War of Rebellion, the war against England, the Revolutionary War. That's the words I was trying to say. Yeah, it's some rich white guys who don't like being under the thumb of the crown, convincing a bunch of other people who are much more desperate than themselves to take up arms and try and overthrow it. And it's just that it didn't work this time, but it did 100 years past that time.
Dude, I'm still just sitting here like, what the fuck, at the audacity that he read about 30 seconds ago, where he was saying, oh, there's 40,000 of us, and it basically trying to act like 40,000 working class people are somehow more oppressed than slaves because there's more of them than there are of slaves, and it's like, wait a fucking minute, guy.
I don't think slaves even factored into his thought at that point. It was just that, why should 40,000 poor white people support 40 rich white people, or aristocrats, I suppose. Let's just do away with the aristocrats, and then we can be the rulers. Of course, it would just then be a different 40 people controlling 40,000.
A new aristocrat.
That's right.
Class. Yeah. Yeah. They just were jealous and they wanted to be the oppressor.
Right.
Well, at least the top oppressor instead of like the mid-level oppressor.
That's right.
What the fuck? And we still see this shit today of people who, you know, have these fucking dreams of becoming the millionaire.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, it's like, you just want to wear the boot.
Right. Yeah, you just want to be the one stomping on the face rather than the face.
Ah! Fucking hate capitalists.
I do too.
I know.
Leveling meant equalizing the wealth. Leveling was to be behind countless actions of poor whites against the rich in all the English colonies in the century and a half before the Revolution. The servants who joined Bacon's rebellion were part of a large underclass of miserably poor whites who came to the North American colonies from European cities whose governments were anxious to be rid of them. In England, the development of commerce and capitalism in the 1500s and 1600s, the enclosing of land for the production of wool, filled the cities with vagrant poor. And from the reign of Elizabeth on, laws were passed to punish them, imprison them in workhouses, or exile them. The Elizabethan definition of rogues and vagabonds included, quote,
all persons calling themselves scholars, going about begging, all seafaring men pretending losses of their ships or goods on the sea, going about the country begging, all idle persons going about in any country, either begging or using any subtle craft or unlawful games, common players of interludes and minstrels wandering abroad, all wandering persons and common labourers, being persons able in body, using loitering, and refusing to work for such reasonable wages as is taxed or commonly given.
Oh, the irony that the idle rich would look at poor people and say, you guys are idlers! Why don't you want to work for our... You're muted, by the way, Trisha. Why don't you want to work for our crap wages so that we can idle instead of you? What the hell, guys? Come on.
Right. And it's still the same bullshit they try to spit today. And they're like, you're so fucking lazy. You don't want to work your ass
No
off
one wants to work.
all goddamn day long for me to only give you a tiny pittance that ain't enough to survive on. How dare you be so lazy? I deserve to get to sit on my ass while you do all the work. Like, you kidding me?
Right.
That's why I really greatly appreciate the sniveling ass voice that he's using for those
Yeah,
quotes.
I do kind of like that too. I found it grating a little bit at the beginning, but it's grown on me as he really plays it up for these self-righteous aristocrats. So I mean, that's the thing though. They don't really care about being idle. They don't care about laziness. They just think the right people deserve to be in those positions, and that everyone else, of course, is supposed to just play their lot in life.
Right. Like, how could you not be thankful to get to work your ass off so this other motherfucker can sit on their ass and eat grapes all day?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don't you know what a fucking opportunity it is?
Huge opportunity.
Yeah. Assholes.
Yep. Straight up.
unquote. Such persons found begging could be stripped to the waist and whipped bloody, could be sent out of the city, sent to workhouses, or transported out of the country. In the 1600s and 1700s, by forced exile, by lures, promises, and lies, by kidnapping, by their urgent need to escape the living conditions of the home country, poor people wanting to go to America became commodities of profit for merchants, traders, ship captains, and eventually their masters in America. Abbott Smith, in his study of indentured servitude, Colonists in Bondage, writes, "From the complex pattern of forces producing emigration to the American colonies, one stands out clearly as most powerful in causing the movement of servants. This was the pecuniary profit to be made by shipping them." After signing the indenture in which the immigrants agreed to pay their cost of passage by working for a master for 5 or 7 years, they were often imprisoned until the ship sailed to make sure they did not run away. In the year 1619, the Virginia House of Burgesses, born that year as the first representative assembly in America, it was also the year of the first importation of black slaves, provided for the recording and enforcing of contracts between servants and masters. As in any contract between unequal powers, the parties appeared on paper as equals, but enforcement was far easier for master than for servant. The voyage to America lasted 8, 10, or 12 weeks, and the servants were packed into ships with the same fanatic concern for profits that marked the slave ships. If the weather was bad and the trip took too long, they ran out of food. The sloop Seaflower, leaving Belfast in 1741, was at sea 16 weeks, and when it arrived in Boston, 46 of its 106 passengers were dead of starvation, 6 of them eaten by survivors. On another trip, 32 children died of hunger and disease and were thrown into the ocean. Gottlieb Mittelberger.
And just think too, like, these stories must have been getting back to places like England and Ireland and other places that these really desperate people were coming from. And yet still they found the conditions in their home country so unbearable as to risk even that to get across. Yeah, it really makes you wonder just how deplorable the conditions were where they were coming from, but that seemed like a good option, even.
Right. But, I mean, to be fair, they also didn't know what further atrocities awaited them, really.
I mean, you'd think there'd be some sort of rumors and stuff, like people would, like, you know, especially the voyages that completely fell apart and people started eating each other and stuff, like, you would think that some message would get back there that, hey, some really bad stuff went down. Maybe they wouldn't know exactly what happened, but, you know, they would at least know that they have a chance of not making it, like a decent chance of not surviving the voyage at all.
This could be really fucking good or really fucking bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
50-50 chance. You might get eaten.
Well, I mean, in a way, they're much like modern-day refugees from all around the world, where things are so terrible and desperate that they, too, I'm sure they know there's a big chance that, you know, if they're crossing the Mediterranean or, you know, trying to cross in from Mexico into the U.S. or whatever it may be, there's a good chance they won't make it. Like they'll die in the voyage, and yet they're still being pushed on by the conditions that they're coming from. And for people to not have any sort of sympathy for that, it's beyond me. Act like they're just trying to come here to live off of welfare or make things harder for us hardworking Americans. No, that's almost never the case. Most people don't want to just uproot their entire family and their entire life and risk death to maybe have a chance of getting into a new and marginally better country for them.
And it's just befuddling because, you know, people are trying to leave basically war-like conditions, you know, in a lot of these countries.
Exactly.
People just fucking disappear. Like, if you have anything political to say against your government, you get disappeared.
Yeah.
It's been happening for fucking decades.
Yeah.
It's so, how there's no empathy for that of, like, now if people are gonna walk thousands of fucking miles, cross through, like, massive portions of, you know, Central and even down into South America, all the way up here, they need to get away from some crazy shit.
Yeah, obviously a good reason. Oftentimes the reason, especially when they're coming from Central and South America, oftentimes the reason is the U.S. and all the meddling that we've done over the past decades, destabilizing governments we didn't like or didn't give us favorable trade deals, squashing any left-wing movement with funding of right-wing death squads, embargoes, sanctions, all for flimsy pretenses.
Then there's, like, that incredibly painful irony of, like, you're leaving the effects of the U.S. to come to the U.S.
Yeah. I guess it's just like, if you can't beat them, join them, you know, at least be on the side of the fence that's lobbing the grenades over it rather than the one receiving them. Which is sad.
In an immigrant prison on the border.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and, you know, what has Biden even done to alleviate the situation? Stop talking about it, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I guess, I don't know if he ever officially ended child separation. I think he might have. But that's about it. There's people still living in terrible conditions. There's still kids in cages, as they always would say during the Trump administration.
Yep.
It's just that we got our eyes elsewhere now too.
And that's the thing. It's like they didn't stop. So I don't understand why people have just let that fall off the radar. And they're like, it's okay now. A Democrat won, so if
Right.
the kids in cages are being treated better than they were under Trump. What?
Yeah.
Like, well, they get to stay with their parents in jail now.
Yeah, I mean, it's all just team sports. It's the people that, as long as their side is winning, they don't really care about the details of it.
Because everything that comes out of their mouth is performative bullshit.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
reason why shit livery sucks, because they don't care if anything actually fucking changes. They just care if the thought of it changing invokes enough people to come vote for their guy.
Right? Yep, and donate. Donate harder so we can defeat those cruel guys, which are also us,
Right.
but also them, and yeah.
It's really bad down here. Like, there are individuals who are, making their own fucking little border patrols out of just citizens, and they're fucking killing people who are crossing.
Oh yeah. It's kind of a legal no man's land down there. I've heard enough stories to believe that. But yeah, think people that get killed down there, whether it's border patrol agents or militias or the people trying to cross, which usually is the people trying to cross,
Right.
they
It's
maybe
like
are never even counted, or given a grave or anything. They're just, that's it. They're disappeared. They're off.
The thing. It's bad enough that we have a border patrol that's official that is doing this shit, but
Yeah,
when then just a bunch of fucking racists who are like, "This is our land." No, the fuck, it's not. This, I mean,
right.
It's fucking frightening that these motherfuckers feel entitled to just go and patrol the border themselves, on top of the already existing, ones with badges.
Mhm.
Like, we don't need any of that. No, this is fucking indigenous land. And last time I checked, people from Mexico and South America are indigenous. I guess I should
Yeah.
say Central and South Turtle Island, because
Right.
America is some European bullshit too.
Right.
This is Turtle fucking Island. If you're indigenous, you're indigenous. You have the right to travel wherever the fuck you want to, without some racist white colonizer ass motherfucker pointing a fucking rifle at you
Mhm.
and either killing you or throwing you in a cage.
Right.
What the fuck?
Yep. Yeah. Why is this the number one issue in these people's minds? They need to go out and form militias to back up. Why is it that we have $40 billion laying around to go give weapons to another country, and we don't have any billions of dollars to solve the border crisis?
Right? Which would be easily solved with, I don't know, building some real housing.
Real
that isn't
housing.
just
And
caged,
just,
or at best open air jail.
well, and like sending down a whole bunch of immigration judges so they can actually process these people's cases and decide whether or not they can stay in the country, whether their asylum claim is worthy or not. At least go through the process that you keep saying everyone should be going through. But
Right.
that doesn't happen either.
And in doing so, okay, this part right here annihilates any argument in favor of these border prisons, because our fucking laws say that when you present yourself at the border and that you're seeking asylum, you are supposed to be given your paperwork, a court date with the magistrate, and released to go secure housing and employment.
Right. We
And
don't
then you
even.
go to your appointment with the judge and you get your shit squared away for your green card and you're good to go. That is how our laws say that you are legally supposed to do. It's just declare yourself.
Mhm.
You're not supposed to be thrown in a fucking cage.
Right. Yeah. We don't even follow our own immigration laws. So, yeah. We obviously just don't care about the problem at all. as a nation.
No, what it comes
Which is
down
very
to
sad.
is a lot of these laws are just pushed by racist ass motherfuckers who just really don't want any more people with pigment coming into the country.
That's true as well. That's definitely true.
It's part of their big replacement theory shit.
Oh, God. Which makes
Yeah.
no sense. It's like immigrants coming into the country doesn't mean there is more, somehow less white people. Like, that doesn't even make sense on a mathematics standpoint. Like, who replaced how? How are they? Is as though every immigrant who's non-white that comes over the border just pushes a white guy out of the United States somehow.
Right.
Like-
It's not like, Zionists going back to Israel to use their right of return to push a Palestinian family out of their house.
Yeah, that's a little bit more literal of a great replacement. Like, for the Palestinians, yeah,
Right.
they're coming in and actively taking their land and pushing them out of it. So,
Right. Here it's
but that's
just
not
that
happening here.
the margin of majority that whites have versus other parts of the population, that margin is getting smaller. And they really think that is... They're calling it genocide. And it's like, motherfucker, you should know what the fuck genocide is, god damn it, because,
Well, and the thing is, there's no demographic in the United States that is reproducing at higher than replacement rates. So,
right.
whether or not we had immigration or not, there still would be less of American people.
Everyone.
Because we're just not reproducing fast enough. So, to say that's somehow a grand conspiracy rather than, I don't know what the problem is, why people decide not to reproduce and then complain about it, but it makes
They're
no sense
trying
to
to
me.
twist those statistics as reason to push for a lot of the things they're pushing for right now, all the way down to the abortion thing, because they really think that they need to have the privilege to force women to birth white babies. I've even gotten some of those trolls on For We Are Many trying to pop in the comments and say shit like, why aren't you married and out there making white babies? And I was like, well, first of all, I'm multiracial, so I couldn't even if I wanted to, but I don't want to, and I don't have to.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't you reading a fucking book, guy, and learning something about, how shit actually works? I don't know. They twist these fucking statistics about birth rates getting lowered to actually invoke fear into people and make them fucking think that, there's some massive conspiracy against white people. And it's like, no, people are just calling out white supremacy. There's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fucking difference.
Yeah.
Hashtag not all white people. That there's a difference. Nobody is calling for, white replacement, although, for fuck's sake, not that I would care. Honestly, we could use more diversity, because the fact that
Diversity tends to be a good thing. Like if for no other reason than just having more perspectives and more languages to think in and more ways of seeing things tends to give you a better chance of solving a given problem. It's hard to incorporate ideas that no one in your particular group has any experience with. So yeah, they've done plenty of studies that find that diversity always ends up better off in terms of problem solving, and there's absolutely no reason that diversity has to equal division. You can appreciate other people without being exactly like them. You can appreciate other ways of thinking and being without adopting them for yourself. Like, these are not mutually exclusive things at all.
Right. Try getting somebody who has those extremist fucking views to understand that, though. It's like asking them to do mental gymnastics when they're already doing them in other fucking ways.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking conclusions. And it's like, hey, this somersault is easier than the flips and bounds you're taking over there to get to that point.
Right.
How about you look at some shit logically here?
Right.
For fuck's sake, good luck with that though. For them, it really comes down to a power struggle, and they see that having less of a majority means less white power.
Right. And that's really all it is. They want to be the ones in control. And, I mean, that's also kind of silly anyway, because as we're seeing in this book, even when they didn't have numerical majority, they still found ways to assert their dominance over masses of people, their own people, as well as the native people that were here too, which also outnumbered them. But,
Right.
so it makes no sense on any level, but I mean, that's the life of a white supremacist. You have to believe a lot of contradictory things at the same time and never examine them very hard in order to keep that going.
Right. And it's really sick how they use that to justify their extreme use of violence
Mm-hmm.
and pretend like they're defending themselves.
Yeah, okay. Defending yourself.
Right.
Wow.
Like, again, another mental what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, how did you jump to that conclusion? But, that's what happens when individuals who have, heavy firepower and things like that can walk into a place and be like, I like it here, this is mine now.
Mm-hmm.
Try
Mm-hmm.
to force that on other people.
Mm-hmm.
They're just trying to start another wave of it. This is one of those things that we predicted when Trump first started running for president of like, okay, he's a shit brick, but this shit brick is gonna fucking embolden a lot of people who
Oh,
actually are volatile and violent and actually are a threat to society. And look at what the fuck is happening.
Absolutely. Yeah, this Nazi problem is not just going away because Trump is gone.
Nope.
It's continuing on.
It's been growing. Hell, that kid that did the shooting in Buffalo,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read any of his manifesto, but like
No.
so much of it that is damn near verbatim from neo-Nazi groups.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. And a lot of talking points from Tucker Carlson. So
That type of shit. He literally even stated in that manifesto, he was like, I wasn't raised racist, I became racist because I read these statistics on this Reddit page and
oh, God.
that social media and this social media and realized that whites are being replaced. And it's like, oh, fuck. You dumb fucking kid. Like, what the fuck? But that's the impact that they're having with this rhetoric. They're actually convincing these kids that this
Mhm.
utter bullshit is fucking true.
Well, right. And like, what even is a white person? It's changed so much over the course of its usage. Like,
Right.
I mean,
Like,
it started
if
out.
you ask a neo-Nazi or a hardcore, like, old school Nazi, it's Aryan, period. That's it.
Yeah, but I mean, there was a time, like I think Benjamin Franklin, he was railing against the Germanification of what is supposed to be an Anglo colony, and he was, wailing against the swarthy hordes from Germany coming in and replacing the good English people, white people. So like, there was a time when Germans were not even considered white. There was a time when Slavic peoples, certainly Mediterraneans, Jewish people, none of them were considered white. And now it seems like we're coming up to another point where they need to enfranchise more people into the white club in order to keep things divided below in the lower classes. So it kind of seems like perhaps Hispanic is going to be the next group of people that get to be white. They already have it on the census where you can check, are you Hispanic or are you white Hispanic or something like that.
I was just about to say, you already see it in the colorism happening in the Hispanic community and others too. I mean, it's a thing, and it's fucked up,
It is fucked up.
It's all fucked up. And the fact that they've tried to use these different things of, oh, well, if your ancient fucking ancestors were from here or from there, qualifies whether you're fully human or not, fuck that shit.
Yeah. But I'm sure that's down the road as well. There'll probably be a time when people from India are inducted into the White Club because they have, Aryan ancestors. That's how the story goes, that, going by the languages, they have ancestors that came from Europe and whatnot.
Well, it was actually the other way around. The original Aryans that the German Nazi Reich was actually trying to show that they had a link to was people from Punjab, India, that were brown skinned.
Uh-huh.
Like, wait a fucking minute. So these same people, the Romani, you're killing them in your camps, but yet stating you want to be like them. It's what?
Yeah.
What?
It has to be
You want to prove
contradictory.
your link to them? Right. They were mass murdering Romani right along with Jews.
Well, and I mean, and that's a big thing about, these white supremacist cults and stuff, is that it can become kind of a test of faith. It's like, can you believe these things that are obviously contradictory with your whole heart and still go along with us? Well, if you can, well, then I guess we have someone who's ride or die, and we can control completely. So I think that contradiction is kind of built into these movements for that purpose, because it's just another way of controlling and proving tests of loyalty. Because no sane person would go in and say, oh yeah, all of these things make sense, even though they clearly contradict themselves, and there's no clear line of who even is in our in-group and who is supposed to be shunned. And so, yeah.
Yeah, they do it with so much verbiage too, and it's so ignorant. Like, even the word Caucasian has absolutely fuck all to do with what level your pigment is. It has to do with, are your people from the Caucasus Mountains?
Right.
So it's like, newsflash, there's black people from the Caucasus Mountains.
Well, right, and those people would not have been considered white by many other white people at various times. So, like,
right, they're technically Caucasian.
Yeah,
and they have dark pigment. Why? Because Caucasian is a geographical descriptor, not a fucking human trait, physically, descriptor. But that's what they turned it into, just to try to pretend like, here's a qualifier. And it's like, all of your qualifiers are bullshit. We're all human beings. We all have the same fucking inherent rights simply for existing.
Yeah, we have pretty much all the same basic desires of living in comfortably without constant threat of death or destruction, and being able to either raise children or just be a part of a community to have it, help it mature and grow, and that's pretty much everybody. That's what everybody wants.
Right. That's the thing. Like, people think that your rights are dependent on whether something is legally protected or not. And it's like, no, your rights are inherent. Whether there's legal protection of it or not is a fucking privilege. That's it.
Yep.
But when you really get down to it.
Right. And all laws
nobody can actually.
All laws are social constructs and that means that we can change them to fit a more ethical version of what the law should be. So, all right. I feel like we've wandered a little bit away from the text, but that's all right. Let's get back into it and see if we can get about halfway done before we have to stop tonight.
A musician traveling from Germany to America around 1750 wrote about his voyage.
During the journey, the ship is full of pitiful signs of distress. Smells, fumes, horrors, vomiting, various kinds of seasickness. Fever, dysentery, headaches, heat, constipation, boils, scurvy, cancer, mouse rot, and similar afflictions, all of them caused by the age and the high salted state of the food, especially of the meat, as well as by the very bad and filthy water. Add to all that the shortage of food, hunger, thirst, frost, heat, dampness, fear, misery, vexation, and lamentation, as well as other troubles. On board our ship, on a day on which we had a great storm, a woman about to give birth and unable to deliver under the circumstances was pushed through one of the portholes into the sea.
Indentured servants were brought and sold like slaves. An announcement in the Virginia Gazette, March 28, 1771, read, "Just arrived at Leestown, the ship of Justitia. with about 100 healthy servants, men, women, and boys. The sale will commence on Tuesday, the 2nd of April. Against the rosy accounts of better living standards in the Americas, one must place many others, like one immigrant's letter from America. Whoever is well off in Europe better remain there. Here is misery and distress, same as everywhere, and for certain persons and conditions, incomparably more than in Europe. Beatings and whippings were common. Servant women were raped. One observer testified, quote, "I have seen an overseer beat a servant with a cane about the head till the blood has followed, for a fault that is not worth the speaking of." The Maryland court records showed many servant suicides. In 1671, Governor Berkeley of Virginia reported that, in previous years, 4 of 5 servants died of disease after their arrival. Many were poor children gathered up by the hundreds on the streets of English cities and sent to Virginia to work. The master tried to control completely the sexual lives of the servants. It was in his economic interest to keep women servants from marrying or from having sexual relations because childbearing would interfere with work. Benjamin Franklin, writing as Poor Richard in 1736, gave advice to his readers.
Let thy maidservant be faithful, strong, and homely.
I'm sorry, I just gotta love the droopy dog voice he did for Benjamin Franklin.
He's great at doing the voices. For
Yeah,
shit.
I like that especially though.
He's not kidding though. I mean, they were so fucking atrocious about that shit. How they came at women who were working in
Oh, yeah.
households. Like, that's why, you know, like, if you weren't a virgin or had a reputation, you wouldn't even get the job. And all you'd need to have a reputation is like having been in a long-term relationship with somebody, and
Yeah.
you know,
Or the word
not
of a
got
gentleman.
Yeah.
You know, some guy who tried to make a pass at you and you rejected and then tarnished your good name because of it.
Right. And then you couldn't even get a fucking job as maid. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear what he's laying out, that women were basically viewed as just more property. And that's it, you know? That's the entire marriage contract, is you're just getting some help for domestic stuff, all your domestic chores.
They didn't have legalized, you know, polygamy, so
Right?
they could do it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking sick motherfuckers.
Pretty much.
Servants could not marry without
Oh,
permission.
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, look, every one of these sections, it's one of those things that you can tie directly to what is still fucking happening now, because not much has fucking changed. Look at how women still get treated in the workplace. Like, so many people wait to tell their, you know, fellow employees or bosses, like, that they've even gotten pregnant because they're afraid their job will get fucked with.
Right. And I mean, it was like 200 years from when he's talking about right now, before women really started entering the workplace en masse, and where it even became the least bit socially acceptable for there to be women in the workplace. And still people question that today.
Right.
I mean, I work landscaping. There's one woman, there may be one on the construction crew, but in a company of like 100 people, there's 2 women.
Damn.
And that's it. So, I mean,
Wow.
just goes to show you how they are viewed by the people that run my company.
That's sad.
It is.
Like, straight the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
There's,
when the gardening department was larger, there were more women, but they would tend to get hired for the gardening positions. But they would work their asses off just like any guy. They were absolutely hard workers, just like anyone else. It's just they're not
But
really given the chance.
when it comes to even openings for like the ground crews and stuff like that. Sorry, but you're not driving a lawnmower with fucking genitals.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what shape they are. What matters is
Exactly.
you know how to drive it.
And that's the thing, is that a lot of the maintenance work is with using power tools, which anybody can use. So, yeah, it makes no sense, but just the way it's gone.
Fucking sexist bullshit.
Yep.
To be separated from their families, could be whipped for various offenses. Pennsylvania law in the 17th century said that the marriage of servants, quote, without the consent of the masters, shall be proceeded against as for adultery or fornication, and children to be reputed as bastards. Although colonial laws existed to stop excesses against servants, they were not very well enforced. We learn from Richard Morris's comprehensive study of early court records in Government and Labor in Early America. Servants did not participate in juries, masters did, and being propertyless, servants did not vote. In 1666, a New England court accused a couple of the death of a servant after the mistress had cut off the servant's toes. The jury voted acquittal. In Virginia in the 1660s, a master was convicted of raping 2 women servants. He also was known to beat his own wife and children. He had whipped and chained another servant until he died. The master was berated by the court, but specifically cleared on the rape charge, despite overwhelming evidence.
That's fucking disgusting.
That absolutely is. Yeah, it seems like men, as I'm sure it's especially men of higher standing at that time, were basically treated the way that police now. It's you can have clearly committed a long list of crimes, but you're just going to get a reprimand at the end of the day in the court, just saying, "Oh, you went a little bit too far there, didn't you? Huh? Well, we'll give you, a 5th chance to redeem yourself."
Once again, another moment in you can do anything you fucking want here so long as you have money. I mean, look at the Ghislaine Maxwell case.
That is the story that has run through all of these chapters, and I think basically runs through this entire book. You got enough money, you're basically above the law. And yeah, that has not changed in American attitude.
I mean, I'd love to know how many people are on that client list of Ghislaine Maxwell's for sexually abusing kids.
Yup.
And they're not allowing, those names to fucking be released. They didn't let any cameras come in the courtroom because too many of those motherfuckers are also on the public payroll.
Yeah. Well, and virtually every high-ranking political official in Washington has been photographed with either Epstein or Maxwell or both, and is on the record of going to their private island. And it's probably not all going to be like campaign dinners if you're going out to this particular island that is designed to be beyond the view of the law.
Right.
So,
that.
pretty good circumstantial evidence.
They all shit their fucking pants about that whole case because what do you do when you have to fire the entire fucking government and start over from scratch? They know that we would be like, okay, fuck your entire system. Both your parties are fucked. Both of you are corrupt. You're committing acts of collusion to cover up each other's fucking heinous ass crimes against humanity.
Yeah.
It would be time for another revolution. It really is.
I mean, I gotta wonder what Maxwell did to get out of that bind. Like how she was able to not accidentally commit suicide like her husband when the cameras just happened to be off.
Right. Suicide my ass.
Right.
A few people just, got better at their hits. It's no longer 2 to the back of the head claimed as suicide. It's hanging.
So either she had something really, really good and a way to disseminate that information no matter what happened to her, or she worked one hell of a deal and they bought it.
Right.
But
honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if her lawyers or someone they were in contact with had a copy of that fucking list.
Oh, yeah. She must have made backups and she must have known that this day would come, too. and prepared for it. So,
Right. Oh,
moving on with more of history's charming people.
yeah.
Sometimes servants organized rebellions, but one did not find on the mainland the kind of large-scale conspiracies of servants that existed, for instance, on Barbados in the West Indies. Abbott Smith suggests this was because there was more chance of success on a small island. However, in York County, Virginia, in 1661, a servant named Isaac Friend proposed to another, after much dissatisfaction with the food, that they, quote, get a matter of 40 of them together, and get guns, and he would be the first, and lead them, and cry as they went along, who would be for liberty and free from bondage, and that there would enough come to them, and they would go through the country and kill those that made any opposition, and that they would either be free or die for it. The scheme was never carried out, but 2 years later in Gloucester County, servants again planned a general uprising. One of them gave the plot away, and 4 were executed. The informer was given his freedom and 5,000 pounds of tobacco. Despite the rarity of servants' rebellions, the threat was always there, and masters were fearful. Finding their situation intolerable and rebellion impractical in an increasingly organized society, servants reacted in individual ways. The files of the county courts in New England show that one servant struck at his master with a pitchfork. An apprentice servant was accused of, quote, laying violent hands upon his master and throwing him down twice and fetching blood out of him, threatening to break his neck, running at his face with a chair. One maidservant was brought into court for being, quote, bad, unruly, sullen, careless, destructive, and disobedient.
Sullen? Sullen? That's something you could get into legal trouble for, is being a sullen servant? Wow.
Oh, why don't you have a smile on your face all the time?
That's
Are you
right.
fucking kidding me? Like,
Are you
no,
not
they're lucky
grateful?
more of them weren't being held at the end of a pitchfork.
I know. And that's the thing that you find all the way through this is the most battered down peoples somehow never just exact total revenge on the people that have done all that stuff to them. And I feel like part of that has to be that they internalize the things that are said and done to them and probably come to believe that they deserve it and are lesser to a certain degree.
That's part of that manipulation when dealing with people who are sociopathic as fuck. It's a gaslighting thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's so fucked up the way that abusive people can literally convince others, this is the best you're ever going to do. You should be glad that you're getting this abuse from me and not from somebody else, because they could be worse.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, that's what our government still does to us now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know, it's maybe not the best system possible, but it's better than, you know, such and such country that we've probably destroyed from the inside.
Right. Right. Saying that other people have it worse because of mostly shit our government has done doesn't mean that that's cause to not fix the bullshit here.
Yeah, or just shut up and be grateful. Like, that's the worst thing you can do.
Right.
Is just shut up and and take it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, this also just renews my conviction that do we want to have a system of any kind, whether it's the private sector or the public sector, that rewards people that act this way and at the very least allows them positions of power where they can get away with doing this for much longer than they otherwise could? Like, that alone is a really good way to refute the idea of capitalism being a good thing, because it allows these things to happen. Allowing these concentrations of power where people become unassailable allows atrocities to be committed. Otherwise, they might not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well said.
So whatever you think about human nature, you can think all people are inherently evil and stuff like that. Well, let's at least come up with a system where those people aren't rewarded for it and can't do even worse things by seeking out these powerful positions. All right, we'll do a couple more minutes and then I think we'll wrap it up for the night.
After the participation of servants in Bacon's rebellion, the Virginia legislature passed laws to punish servants who rebelled. The preamble to the act said, quote,
Whereas many evil-disposed servants in these late times of horrid rebellion, taking advantage of the looseness and liberty of the time, did depart from their service and followed the rebels in rebellion, wholly neglecting their masters' employment, whereby the said masters have suffered great damage and injury.
2 companies of English soldiers remained in Virginia to guard against future trouble, and their presence was defended in a report to the Lords of Trade and Plantation, saying, quote, Virginia is at present poor and more populous than ever. There is great apprehension of a rising among the servants, owing to their great necessities and want of clothes. They may plunder the storehouses and ships. Escape was easier than rebellion. Quote, Numerous instances of mass desertions by white servants took place in the southern colonies, reports Richard Morris on the basis of an inspection of colonial newspapers in the 1700s. Quote, the atmosphere of 17th century Virginia, he says, quote, was charged with plots and rumors of combinations of servants to run away. The Maryland court records show in the 1650s a conspiracy of 12 servants to seize a boat and to resist with arms if intercepted. They were captured and whipped.
No, at least
The
they weren't killed
mechanism
that time.
of control was formidable. Strangers had to show passports or certificates to prove they were free men. Agreements among the colonies provided for the extradition of fugitive servants. These became the basis of the clause in the U.S. Constitution that persons, quote, held to service or labor in one state, escaping into another, shall be delivered up, unquote.
That sounds like the Fugitive Slave Act. I guess that
Right.
applied to indentured servants as well. So, hooray.
Killer part is their criminality being they left their poor masters to have to wash their own dishes and sweep their own floors. How dare
Yup.
they?
How dare they? They
Severe
had a
harm?
contract. Does your word mean nothing, sir? Like, what a screwed up world that was.
I highly doubt
You know,
if all the
still
terms
is.
were in the contract. Yeah. Of like,
Yeah.
by the way, signing up for putting up with abusive shit from me, from beatings to rape and everything else. I'm going to treat you like property, period. You're an
Mhm.
object.
Yeah, yeah. And we see that today in our upper class people who just view the world as objects as well, you know. Musk paying $250,000 to shut up a woman that he expected to just pleasure him because she was his masseuse and thought he could get away with it.
Right. Now, there's certain places where you can go for that service, and they call it a light fingertip massage. They can't call it massage because massage is a licensed therapeutic service. Jerking you off is not.
Right, yeah.
You came to the wrong place, Elon, buddy.
Well, I mean, she was on his private plane too, so he just expects.
What's
She was on his private jet. She was like hired to go with him places and give him actual massages. It's just that he wanted more, and he thought he could do that without any consequences.
Nope. Nope. You can want in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up first, okay?
No, it says that.
Like, just the attitude of entitlement of like, well, you're here for whatever services I want, right?
That's
Nope.
right. Yeah, money is no object if that's what you're worried about. Oh, yeah. Rich people are scum. Rich people are scum. It's just,
Yeah.
it makes you a scummy person because you never have to hear no, and then it makes you think you can just do whatever, and there's no boundaries between you and other people because money can always smooth over that boundary.
Right. They never hear no as no. They hear it as how much more.
Exactly. What's the price actually?
Right. Yep. Exactly. Like, just how much do I have to throw at you to get you to say yes?
Right.
It's fucked up. It's really fucked up because, I mean, they're using people's poverty to exploit them in those situations. And to
Oh, for
allowing
sure.
what it's, again, human rights violations.
Right. And they know that these people wouldn't want to do these things if they didn't desperately need the money. That's probably part of what they get off on, too. It's
Right.
making them feel like they're, worthy, and because they're so worthy, they can manipulate people as they will.
It's
Pretty
fucked up.
sick. Pretty sick. Pretty sick.
Yep. That false sense of entitlement. Again, sociopathic behavior.
Yep. That we reward. They're a go-getter. They're ruthless. They didn't care who they stepped on the rise to the top. All these things are like lionized and mythologized in this culture. Often by other rich people who make movies about it, but just in general,
Right.
that's the sentiment that people that are ruthless in business are to be revered. It's
Fuck that.
nothing personal. It's business. Like that's somehow an ethical
Right.
standard to hold
Right.
up for everybody.
Saying it's just business doesn't make it okay. No, that's fucked business. That's unethical business.
Yeah. Or isn't it kind of screwed up that business wants us to do all these terrible things for it? Maybe we should regulate business in a way that it doesn't have these incentives, but
Right. Like everything being owner-operated co-ops.
yeah.
You work
Hey,
there, you have a stake in the company, period. And
I
it's
love
saying
that.
how it's no more bullshit.
Right.
This hierarchy bullshit does not fucking work.
No.
Where, it's one thing to have even like some leadership roles, but I'm talking about the money part, even,
Yeah.
that part of the hierarchy is fucked. There's no excuse for
No, they're
one
not.
person or a handful of people raking in all the fucking profits that are unpaid wages in getting by with everybody else getting a fucking pittance that isn't enough for survival. It is inexcusable.
Well, how about we even go further than that? How about we elect our bosses? How about we decide who among us are the best to lead, and then maybe hold elections every year or two, so that if we get a shitty one in there, we can do something about it, and then they have to stay on their toes and make sure that they are providing for our needs, not just a one-way street of you better pull your weight or you're out of here, buddy. They should have to be held to that standard as well.
Right. It's like you can get put right back on just regular crew.
That's right.
It's one of those things where that type of accountability we really do need, but it's been shunned as if that type of accountability is asking too much from
Right.
from the fucking incredibly fucked founding of this fucked institution here.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
horrendous, and people
Well,
wonder why we're raging.
yeah, right. Right. Yeah. And it is a burden to have to learn about these things, because then once you do, you can never just pretend to go back to a time when you didn't know about it. But it's important, If you're ever going to want to make a better system, you have to really study the ways that the current and the old system sucked or continue to suck. So, yeah. Blessing and a curse.
Yep.
Well, so join us next time to hear more about pompous rich people and their entitlement and the things they think they can do with other people's bodies.
Yeah. That.
Um,
And more comparing them to modern day what the fucks.
Yep.
We still have running shit here.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's going on with For We Are Many lately? What have you guys been up to?
Well, we did a movie watch along the other night.
Oh yeah, I couldn't make that. I was out. But...
Yeah. We actually did a rerun of Judas and the Black Messiah because only a couple of our patrons were able to make it the first time. So
such a good movie.
We did it again, and yeah, I love that movie. That's one I've watched so
Everyone
many
should
times.
watch that.
Every time I still catch something else, another detail
Right?
that I had missed, previous times. And it's one of those movies that really makes me want to fucking scream.
Uh-huh.
But I find so important for people to watch and actually see, the collusion that happened there with the Chicago PD and the feds collaborating to commit cold-blooded murder.
All in the name of preserving white supremacy.
Yep.
So yeah, check out that's
Yeah.
title didn't come up with it, but that is the IMDb for Judas and the Black Messiah that I just posted there. So, yeah,
Excellent
everyone should
film.
check that out.
Yeah. And we've only been doing usually the current events once a week lately because we're working on putting some more stuff together as part of the relaunch. But
Very cool.
hopefully soon here we'll be able to pick back up the Panther education pieces and Emma Goldman's Anarchism and Other Essays.
Oh yeah.
If you'll join us for that, that would be dope.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So there also is an announcement, but I kind of want to wait till the current events this week to announce
Okay.
it.
Yeah, fair
And
enough.
I think you might already know you're privy to it because you're in both chats. But if you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking
No,
about.
I don't actually know what you're talking about, so I'll be excited to learn too.
It's pretty cool. Well, it's something you have a vote in because you're in the For We Are Many staff chat too. So if you see the poll in there that I put up yesterday, you'll know. But yeah, we'll
I'll have
probably
to
make
look for
that
that. Yeah,
on Friday.
exciting.
Yeah, very cool stuff.
Very cool.
Things are growing
Very cool.
in beautiful ways. Yeah.
Nice. So, are you going to be available for the Wednesday stream?
Yeah.
This week?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't figured out which one I'm going to pick, but I got a whole bunch of short essays. I think we'll do an anarchist one this time.
Hell
just
yeah.
to balance things out, and
Great.
we'll switch back to the communist side again, go back and forth, get a
Sounds
bunch of
good.
different perspectives. So
Absolutely.
yeah, if you have any in mind that you would like to, let me know, and we'll cover those.
Okay. Yeah. If I think of any, I'll shoot you a message. Let you know. I dig that because it's one of those things that really shows people how much common ground we have when it comes to our political analysis and ideology and our goals.
Right. And I figure too, even if you don't end up agreeing with everything from the opposing side, the other side of leftism, at least you know what they think, so you can at least understand where they're coming from. So maybe the next interaction you have with someone who does believe in that stuff doesn't have to be hostile or negative in any way.
Right. Because, well, that's the thing. Like, there's always something good to be gained from it. If there's something that you find issue with, of like, oh, well, this person in the past that started this branch of the movement did these things right, but did those things wrong. Okay, let's learn from that and fucking do better than where they fucked up. There's
Right.
always something good to be taken from it.
Always something to learn.
Always.
Very good. All right, and on that, I think I'll say good night to you, and good night to the chat and everybody. And I will see you guys Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. So until then, goodbye.